What happens when a mother's grief transforms into unstoppable courage? In a moment that stunned the nation, Menglong's mother stood face to face with a man accused of taking her son's life, demanding that he reveal the truth no one else dared to speak. This confrontation finally unmasked the horrifying reality behind his tragic death. Let's join Red Carpet Revealed to uncover the shocking story right now. What happens when the unbearable grief of a mother transforms into a force more powerful than fear itself? When silence, mourning, and despair give way to confrontation, courage, and the demand for truth? The tragic death of Menglong left millions in shock, devastated fans around the world, and brought an entire industry to its knees. But nothing could prepare the nation for the moment his mother, heartbroken but unyielding, faced a man who had confessed to ending her son's life. In that confrontation, she did not cry. She did not falter. Instead, she demanded what the world had been waiting for since the fateful night of September 11th, the full truth behind Menglong's horrifying end. Menglong's story was one that inspired countless young people. He was a dreamer who became a star, a gentle soul whose smile lit up screens and whose voice carried the emotions of a generation. Rising from modest beginnings, captured hearts across Asia, not only for his looks but for his ability to make audiences feel seen. In dramas, he embodied romance, resilience, and sincerity. In music, he gave voice to pain and hope alike. For his fans, he wasn't just an entertainer, he was a symbol of possibility. Proof that authenticity could thrive in a world of artifice. His name became synonymous with kindness, humility, and dedication. That is why the news of his sudden death struck with such devastating force. On September 11th, Menglong fell to his death under circumstances that authorities quickly described as an accident. The word spread across headlines, and grief enveloped the nation. Fans gathered in candlelit vigils, leaving flowers, letters, and photos at makeshift memorials. On social media, the name trended for weeks, with messages pouring in from across the globe. Yet even in those early hours of sorrow, unease lingered. The details were too vague, official reports too incomplete, the story too inconsistent. How could a man so full of life, at the peak of his career, simply vanish in such a way? The questions grew louder when Fan Shiki, a fellow actor and rumored rival, shattered the silence. In what was supposed to be a press conference to dispel rumors, broke down in front of cameras and confessed, "I was the one who ended Menglong's life." His words sent shockwaves through the world of entertainment. Within minutes, the confession was everywhere. Fans gasped in horror. Journalists scrambled to reframe the story, and brands cut ties with him overnight. For weeks, the confession was treated as the end of the story. The villain had been revealed, the tragedy explained. Yet, as time passed, doubts began to creep back in. Would he confess so suddenly, so publicly, and without presenting evidence? Was it genuine guilt? Or was he shielding someone else? Menglong's mother, too stricken by grief to speak in those early months, remained silent. She appeared only briefly, attending vigils and memorials, her face a mask of sorrow. The nation mourned with her, projecting its collective heartbreak onto her quiet figure. For many, she was the embodiment of loss. But while she appeared broken on the outside, something within her was hardening. Silence could no longer serve her son's memory. Rumors swirled unchecked, narratives twisted, and truth seemed to slip further away with each passing day. Her pain became her strength, and her grief became her resolve. She would not allow her son's legacy to be defined by half-truths and shadows. The moment of confrontation came unexpectedly. Behind closed doors, in a setting stripped of glamour and spectacle, the mother stood face to face with Fan Shiki. Were the flashing cameras and the watching crowds. This was not a press conference, nor a public performance. This was raw, intimate, and unbearably tense. On one side, a man haunted by his own words; on the other, a mother whose love and loss had stripped her of fear. Witnesses later described the room as electric, the silence between them charged with decades of love and months of grief. She did not shout. She did not rage. Instead, her voice was low, steady, and filled with a weight that no performance could replicate. "Tell me the truth about my son," she said. Those words cut deeper than any accusation, lawyers' cross-examination, any headline. They were not the words of a nation demanding answers, but of a mother demanding closure. Her eyes locked onto his, Unblinking, unwavering. Every second stretched into eternity as the question hung in the air. For Fan Shiki, this was no ordinary confrontation. He had faced journalists, critics, and even the wrath of fans. But he had not faced her, not the woman whose life had been forever altered by his words. Not the person who had given Yu Menglong life and now demanded to know how it had been taken away. His composure faltered. His voice cracked. His confession, once so boldly declared, now trembled under the weight of her gaze. At first, he repeated what he had already said, almost as if clinging to a script. "I was the one," he whispered. Mother did not relent. She pressed further, voice growing firmer. "Why? Tell me why. Tell me how. The truth you have not spoken." Her persistence was relentless. If unyielding. Witnesses said her presence was overwhelming. Not because she was loud, but because she was immovable. She embodied the unstoppable pain of a mother who had lost everything, and the unyielding strength of a woman who refused to be silenced. The room grew heavier as Fan Shiki's defenses cracked. He welled with tears, his hands shook. His words stumbled. "It wasn't just me," he muttered, almost inaudibly. The admission, small as it was, shifted the air. Suddenly, the confession that had once seemed final became incomplete. There was more. There had always been more. The relentless weight of a mother's demand. The cracks in his story began to widen. What exactly he revealed that day remains partially shrouded in secrecy. But those present say his words hinted at forces larger than himself. He spoke of pressure, of threats. A role he played but did not control. He spoke of others whose names he dared not utter. Of circumstances orchestrated beyond his power. It was not the full truth, not yet. It was enough to confirm what many had long suspected. That Yu Menglong's death was not the simple tragedy authorities had once claimed, nor the straightforward confession the media had repeated. Something darker, more complex, and far more terrifying. Yu Menglong's mother. This confrontation was not the end but the beginning. Her tears flowed, but they did not weaken her. Her pain was still unstoppable. Her strength still unyielding. She had forced the cracks to appear. Now she would not rest until the entire truth came to light. The confrontation was not just personal, it was symbolic. It represented the battle of ordinary love against extraordinary corruption, of raw humanity against cold deception. As the news of the confrontation leaked to the public, the world once again found itself holding its breath. Fans were stunned, the media erupted, and the nation demanded more. What had been revealed? What was still hidden? Who were the others Fan Shiki had alluded to? The confrontation had raised more questions than it answered. But it had done something even more important. It had reignited the fight for truth. Closes not with resolution. Anticipation. The unstoppable pain of a mother has collided with the crumbling facade of a confession. And in that collision lies the promise of revelation. Now waits to hear the rest of the story. To learn the horrifying truth that has been buried for too long. The confrontation between Yu Menglong's mother and Fan Shiki did not remain behind closed doors for long. Whispers of what had been said began to seep into the public sphere. Spreading first through fan forums, then exploding across mainstream media. Within hours, the nation was ablaze with speculation. What exactly had Fan Shiki admitted? Truth had he tried so desperately to hide until a grieving mother forced it out of him. The silence of officials only deepened the frenzy. When the confrontation became more than a private reckoning, it became a national turning point. For the first time, Fan Shiki's confession was no longer seen as the definitive end of the story, but as the beginning of a far more complex truth. Those who had once condemned him outright now began to question whether he had been the sole villain or merely a player in a larger game. His words, "It wasn't just me," reverberated across the nation like a curse, leaving the public to wonder who else had been involved. Who else had reason to see Yu Menglong silenced? The idea that his death might have been the result of a conspiracy, a carefully orchestrated plan carried out by more than one hand, gained traction overnight. The emotional weight of the confrontation shifted the balance of power. No longer was Yu Menglong remembered simply as a victim. Fan Shiki as the lone perpetrator. The story had grown into something far larger, an indictment of an entire system. If what Fan Shiki implied was true, then Yu Menglong's death was not an isolated crime, but a symptom of corruption deeply embedded within the industry itself. This was not merely about one actor's jealousy or rivalry. It was about power, control, and the silencing of voices that threatened to expose uncomfortable truths. Yu Menglong's mother became the face of this fight. Her image, once one of quiet grief, blazed across television screens and magazine covers as a symbol of courage. Talk shows replayed her words. Commentators praised her bravery, and fans called her the mother who defied silence. She did not present herself as a celebrity or an activist. As a mother whose love for her son transcended fear. Jane was unstoppable, her strength unyielding, and her refusal to bow to intimidation ignited hope in millions. People who had once felt powerless in the face of industry corruption now saw in her a figure of resistance, proof that truth could still prevail. Public response was unprecedented. Demonstrations erupted across major cities, with fans carrying banners that read "Justice for Menglong" and "The truth must be heard." Social media became a battleground where theories, evidence, and speculation were shared in real time. Users claimed to have uncovered new information, including financial documents linking powerful investors to Yu Menglong's projects. Others claimed that the missing surveillance footage from the night of his death had been deliberately erased to protect someone high up. Whether true or not, these claims fueled the sense that the case was far from over. Internationally, the story dominated headlines. Outlets in the United States, Europe, and South Korea ran features on the confrontation, framing it as one of the most explosive scandals in recent entertainment history. Documentaries were pitched almost immediately, promising to investigate not only Yu Menglong's death but the broader culture of silence in global celebrity industries. For many foreign audiences, it was their introduction to Yu Menglong, and they embraced him as both a fallen star and a symbol of truth suppressed by power. Ironically, in death, fame had grown larger than life, transcending borders and languages. Meanwhile, legal consequences loomed. The authorities, under intense scrutiny, reopened the investigation once more. Prosecutors demanded a review of all evidence, including the diary, the voice recording, and now the testimony extracted by his mother during her confrontation. Defense lawyers argued that Fan Shiki's initial confession could no longer be taken at face value. His own admission that others were involved. For the first time, the possibility of multiple charges against multiple suspects became real. Names were whispered, though never confirmed. Powerful figures, once untouchable, now found themselves under suspicion, their empires trembling at the threat of exposure. Fan Shiki himself was transformed in the public eye. Where once he had been vilified, he was now seen as a tragic figure. Perhaps guilty but also perhaps coerced. Some fans pitied him, imagining the pressure that might have forced him to confess to something he did not do alone. Others insisted he remained complicit. Whatever role he played was still unforgivable. The ambiguity of his position kept the public riveted into both villain and victim in a narrative that refused to settle. His trembling admission during the confrontation became one of the most analyzed moments in recent history, replayed endlessly in discussions, debates, and documentaries. For Yu Menglong's mother, however, ambiguity was not enough. She pressed forward, demanding clarity where others had offered only silence. Her voice grew stronger with each passing day. As though her grief had given her an inexhaustible well of strength, she appeared at protests, met with investigators, and spoke directly to fans, reminding them that this was not merely a story of entertainment gossip but of justice, dignity, and truth. The message was simple yet powerful: my son deserves the truth, and I will not stop until it is revealed. Cultural impact was seismic. Artists painted murals of Yu Menglong across city walls. Musicians dedicated songs to his memory. Fan clubs transformed into advocacy groups. Money for legal campaigns and organizing awareness events. Schools even reported students writing essays about him, seeing him as a symbol of honesty in a corrupt world. Tragedy had become a movement, and at the heart of it all was the unyielding strength of a mother who refused to let her son's death be buried beneath lies. But even as the movement grew, so too did the dangers. Anonymous threats were reported. Some witnesses who had come forward retracted their statements under suspicious circumstances. Rumors spread of intimidation tactics being used to silence those who might reveal too much. Each revelation seemed to widen the mystery, suggesting that the forces behind Yu Menglong's death were not only real but actively working to keep the truth hidden. The fight for justice became not just a battle for memory, but a war against a machine built on fear. Confrontation had started as a mother's demand for answers. But it had grown into something far larger, a cultural reckoning, a national scandal, and a global headline. The unstoppable pain of loss had transformed into unyielding strength, and that strength had shaken the foundations of an entire industry. Still, the most haunting questions remained unanswered. Exactly were the others Fan Shiki had alluded to? Why had Menglong been targeted? What secrets had he carried that were worth silencing at such a terrible cost? As the months passed, the fight did not fade. If anything, it grew stronger. Each protest, each article, each documentary fueled the demand for truth. Menglong's face, once a symbol of light-hearted joy, now became a haunting reminder of what happens when innocence collides with power. His mother, though weary, continued to push forward. Strength unbroken, her resolve undimmed. She had forced cracks into the facade of lies, and she would not rest until those cracks brought the entire truth crashing down. And so the story remains unresolved, suspended between confession and conspiracy, between revelation and silence. The confrontation between mother and killer changed everything, but it also revealed how much more lies beneath. It is a reminder that in the world of fame, where lights shine bright but shadows run deep, truth is the most dangerous force of all. The legacy of Menglong endures not only through his art but through the fight his mother has waged in his name. Her unstoppable pain has become unstoppable strength. Yielding demand for truth has become the voice of millions. Confrontation, though rooted in personal grief, become a universal story, a story of love, courage, and the refusal to let lies prevail. The world may not yet know the full truth of Menglong's death, but one thing is certain: as long as his mother stands unyielding, as long as fans continue to raise their voices, as long as the memory of Menglong inspires the living, truth will not remain buried forever. The confrontation between Menglong's mother and his confessed killer has changed everything. What was once dismissed as a closed case has now erupted into a storm of revelations, suspicion, and demands for justice. Unstoppable pain has become unyielding strength. Every word, every tear, every demand. She has forced the world to look again at the tragedy that silenced her son. The truth may still be buried in shadows. One thing is undeniable: this mother's fight has shaken the entire nation and awakened millions who refuse to let Menglong's story fade. Thank you for staying with us on this emotional and shocking journey. Your voices, your questions, and your passion keep the truth alive. Don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts below, because together, we'll continue the fight for answers. And as always, stay tuned. Red Carpet Revealed will be here to uncover the next explosive truth the world needs to hear.